Loadouts in Call of Duty Zombies are a very controversial topic that a lot of people disagree on within the zombies community, and just recently, the Twitter page COD Intel just leaked that loadouts will be returning in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Of course, I don't know the actual credibility of this leaker, so I have no idea if this is actually credible or not, but chances are we can probably assume they are going to have some sort of loadout system in the game. In this video, I'm going to be giving my full thoughts on the loadout system that we've had in previous Zombies games and essentially explaining why I don't like the loadout system, and I'll also give some alternative ideas of how they can implement a loadout-like system in order to please the fans that do want loadouts. First of all, let's explain why the system exists in the first place. Why did they feel the need to switch from doing just simple starting weapons to then allowing you to choose whatever weapon you want? This change actually technically began back in Call of Duty World War II Zombies, which was the first time where they gave you multiple options for your starting weapons. Of course, before that, every single map had a specific starting weapon for each map. Sometimes they changed it around a bit, like for example on Origins, you got the Mauser instead of the usual M1911. But once we got to COD World War II, it was the first time where you can actually choose between a couple different weapons. Now, the selected weapons you can choose from were like the worst weapons in the game. So you weren't going to be able to choose like a really solid assault rifle or a really solid LMG to start with. You had to choose between a couple different pistols, a couple really bad shotguns, and that's pretty much all you were getting. Black Ops 4 continued the same thing where you get a couple different choices from mainly the worst guns in the game. The MOG 12 was pretty overpowered at launch, of course they nerfed it later on, but you weren't able to start with something like the Helion Salvo, for example. And then Black Ops Cold War Zombies came around and they decided that you can start with literally any gun in the game, and there's a couple reasons why they did this. First of all, they really wanted to make a system where most of the guns in the game are rather similar in usability. So they decided to implement the rarity system where all guns start off with the gray rarity when you first spawn in with it, and then you have to either level up the rarity through using salvage, or you could hit the mystery box and try your luck there, or get a wall weapon. But from the developers' perspectives, they felt like this made sense because now players have the choice to play basically however they want. If they really love sniper rifles and they want to always play with sniper rifles, you can jump into a match with a sniper rifle and keep it to the end of the game and not buy any other gun on the map. You can do that. You can start with an LMG, you can start with a shotgun, a pistol, whatever class of weapons you want, whatever specific gun you really like, you can kind of just jump into the match and play with it. And that's especially important for the camo grind as well as just the weapon level grind. Now, of course, with the whole unification between Warzone and multiplayer that Cold War wanted to do, it makes sense that they were essentially trying to get multiplayer and Warzone fans to actually play zombies and have a reason to play zombies. And of course, if they're able to use whatever the gun they want when they spawn in, they're probably going to be more likely to play because, well, let's say they wanted to level up their PPSH for multiplayer, but they don't feel like leveling it up in multiplayer, they can go hop into zombies, spawn in with the PPSH, and get as many kills with it as possible. They don't have to rely on the PPSH being a wall buy or it being in the box. They just can jump in, just get all the kills they need, level up their PPSH, and they're good to go. That's essentially the whole purpose of this system, and that's one of the main reasons they decided to do it. And that's pretty much the only actual reason that I feel like most people argue online as to why they like loadouts is because of the camo grind. They don't want to jump into a match and have to rely on a mystery box luck in order to get the weapon they want to level up. And I understand that makes sense, but doesn't it sound kind of weird to design the core game mechanics around the camo grind, which is obviously not meant to be like the most major part of the Call of Duty Zombies experience? Sure, for a lot of people, it was the most major part of the Zombies experience in Cold War, but I think that's just because Cold War Zombies didn't really have much to offer elsewhere. Like, there really wasn't much depth to that mode that it turned into just being a camo grinder, and everyone was playing it just for the camo grind. And I'm going to give a few reasons as to why I just hate this system. I think it just really didn't work in Cold War and Vanguard. And of course, as I said before, we'll get into some alternative suggestions. I'm not going to say they should just throw out loadouts completely, because of course I want this game to be able to please as many players as possible. First of all, even though they tried to balance all the weapons to try to make them as similar to each other as possible, there still are obvious meta weapons that players are always going to start with. And I know they have the whole rarity system, so even though you start with a meta weapon, it's obviously going to be a bit weaker, you could still just keep that weapon and just level it up through salvage. That's a lot easier to do than just going to the box, hitting it a bunch, and trying to get that actual weapon later on. You can just start with it and you're pretty much good to go. And there are some obvious meta weapons, especially in a game like Black Ops Cold War. The Gallo, the Hauer, the M16, those were like known as some of the most meta weapons. And yes, if you're playing casually, it doesn't really matter. You can probably use any other weapon, you'll be just fine. But if you're doing stuff like Easter eggs, yeah, obviously you're going to be at an advantage using those better weapons as opposed to using some random SMG that you probably won't touch unless you're doing the camo grind. And what this usually leads to is just less variety in weapon choices, and especially within the match itself. Of course, if you're doing the camo grind, yes, you're going to be using every single weapon. That's obvious, but that's like a forced variety sort of a thing, where you're basically forced to use different weapons to get that camo. So obviously you're going to be using them, but you're not using them because you want to, or because it's just how the natural progression of the game works. You go to other zombies modes like Black Ops 3, yeah, there were certain weapons that were definitely the meta and I would usually use them, but I feel like there was plenty of options there that could still work just fine. I would hit the mystery box. You can get plenty of guns in the mystery box that would definitely work just fine in Black Ops 3. Then there's a bunch of different wall buys that are pretty useful in Black Ops 3 as well, and sometimes I'd get those early on in the game to hold me over until I get to the mystery box, or I'd just get one of the wall weapons and keep that for a bit because some of the wall weapons were actually pretty good. But there was actual reasons to go around and buy different guns at different points in the game, whereas nowadays there really is no reason for that. And I want to make it clear that a lot of these problems I have with the loadout system also apply to the point system and the rarity system. And I've already made a video on the point system and why I hate the new point system. Definitely go check that out. But a lot of these changes I want with the loadout system would have to also change some things like the point system and possibly even the rarity system for it all to work. Now, I wanted to mention that because this next argument does relate heavily to the point system and the rarity system, but this is essentially just the purpose that specific weapons have kind of been lost because of this new system. And again, going back to classic zombies, and really this can go for any classic zombies mode, you would start off with your starting pistol. Sometimes they would change it up and give you a different type of starting weapon, like I said for Origins with the Mauser, and even there was times where they gave you other weapons that weren't even pistols. For example, Infinite Warfare on Raven the Redwoods, you had to start off with melee weapons, which I thought was really interesting and really different. And then you go to the Beast from Beyond, which is a terrible map, but you got to start with the ARX, which was pretty interesting, like a first time ever where you start off with an assault rifle in zombies. Like, that was huge, that was crazy. And of course nowadays that would mean absolutely nothing because you get to do that for any map now, but it was specifically unique to that map and it gave the map some identity. Same for some other maps like the Bloodhound on Shadows of Evil, that gave that map and that weapon more specific identity. And then of course there's the wall weapons, right? So of course you have wall weapons in the spawn and then scattered throughout the whole map. When is the last time you've ever purchased a wall buy in Cold War Zombies? I personally don't think I've purchased one since like the game first released, to be completely honest, because they're kind of pointless, especially the wall buys in like the first room, because whatever gun you're starting with is gonna be good enough, no matter what gun it is, to hold you off at least for a few rounds, even like some of the worst guns. Now, of course, if you force yourself to start with the M1911, you might want to get rid of it kind of quickly because it's not very good at the early rounds. But most guns, especially if you start with an assault rifle SMG, you're gonna be fine until at least like round 7 or 8. You go back to Black Ops 1, you start off with the M1911, you're not gonna get that far with that thing. You're gonna have to buy a wall buy, which gives the wall buys actual purpose and importance. It also gave the mystery box huge importance. You would actually have a decent reason to gamble your points and try to get better weapons. Now in Cold War, the only reason to hit the mystery box is either for the wonder weapon if you're trying to get it, or of course if you're trying to get a higher rarity weapon. But because of how the mystery box works in Cold War, it is less likely to give you higher rarity weapons in the early rounds, which makes sense, right? But what that basically does is it kind of discourages you from even bothering to touch the mystery box until later rounds because you don't want to keep hitting it and just getting green and blue weapons. So you're probably going to wait till like round 20 or something to start hitting the mystery box. But at that point, you're probably going to have enough salvage to fully upgrade your weapon level rarity on your starting weapon. So what's even the point of bothering with the mystery box if you can fully upgrade your weapon all the way? And of course, if you've done all the Easter eggs, you probably have the super Easter egg by now, which allows you to start with any weapon of purple rarity, which is obviously pretty overpowered, so it even gives you less reason now, which I'm totally fine with that, to be honest, because that's like a super Easter egg reward. That makes sense. But even without the super Easter egg reward, it's still a problem. And now I want to respond to a few different arguments I hear for why people like the loadout system. One of the biggest ones I always hear is, why not just spawn in with the M1911 pistol if you want a starting pistol back? Because of course you can still use the M1911 in Cold War Zombies. I gotta be honest, I feel like this argument is always just like intentionally missing the point, because it really doesn't have much to do with the core argument, and I'll explain what I mean. Psychologically speaking, when people play a video game, they are actively trying to find ways to make the game easier for themselves without even them realizing it. So, for example, in Zombies, what are you doing most of the game? You're trying to get perks, you're trying to get Pack-a-Punch, you're trying to get wonder weapons, you're trying to go for the best items because you want to make sure you can survive as long as possible. You want to make sure you can complete Easter eggs as easy as possible, because that's kind of the whole point of playing Call of Duty Zombies. You're just trying to complete different tasks, trying to just survive as long as you can. Like, that's what you're doing. So yes, you're going to go out of your way, do as many things possible to make the game easier for you. And this is regardless of if you actually want the core game to be easier or harder. I've always said I prefer Zombies being harder. I definitely enjoy a lot of difficulty. I like when the Easter eggs are hard. I like when the core game is hard, but I still am going to be playing my matches trying to get the good items. I'm still going to be going for the wonder weapon, getting as many perks as I possibly can, getting the most powerful guns. I'm still going to be doing that regardless of me wanting the game to be harder. Unless, of course, I'm doing one of those like fun challenges you do for a video sometimes. I've done like the no power challenge before, or the 2-box challenge. Like, we all know those challenges. Those are fun to do always, but at the end of the day, you're not usually doing those. So if a player has the option to use literally any gun in the game, they're not going to choose the absolute worst possible gun just to have that classic starting with a pistol feeling, which ultimately doesn't end up having that classic starting with a pistol feeling, because Cold War doesn't even have the classic point system. So that classic starting with a pistol feeling, you can't even accurately get within this game at all. Not to mention, starting pistols used to have this really cool feature about them where they were obviously the worst gun at the game to start, but when you Pack-a-Punched it, it suddenly became one of the best guns. People love the Mustang and Sally, people love the Boomhilda on Origins, but guess what? Nowadays with the pistol, M1911 in Cold War, it's not even close to being one of the best guns when you Pack-a-Punch it, so why would anyone want to keep that pistol? There is literally nothing in the game encouraging you to not use any other weapon other than the starting pistol, other than just the idea of, oh, it might give you some of those classic feels, but in reality, it really doesn't end up giving you those feels at all. I've tried it before. I've loaded into Cold War with the starting pistol. It does not feel like classic Zombies at all. Especially because you know deep down that you could have used any other weapon to spawn in with, and guess what? Most of those guns are going to make it a lot faster for you. It's not even necessarily making it easier. I feel like people use the word easier a lot, and I've probably been using that in this video. That's not even a good word to use, because Cold War is so fucking easy by default that no matter what gun you're using to spawn in with, it's still going to be incredibly easy. You are not going down the first 5 to 6 rounds. It's just not happening. But using a different gun like the M16 is just going to make it quicker. So if you want to spend, 30 minutes on the first couple rounds, that's definitely an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. You're going to spend more time on those early rounds. I would rather just get an M16, mow down the zombies, get through them as fast as I can, get into later rounds. I'd much rather do that. Because yeah, I'm not getting a classic feel with that pistol. I'm not getting to maximize my points with it, shooting in the leg. I'm not really getting that classic feel at all. It's just making the game intentionally slower for what? There's no point. It's not a classic feel at all. Something else I've also heard brought up in relation to this is, well, why were you okay with the Gobblegums system if the Gobblegums system is basically the same idea where you can just make the game a lot easier for yourself? And this is an interesting debate, I will say, because personally, I actually don't like the Gobblegums system in Black Ops 3 that much. I don't think it's like a terrible thing, because at the end of the day, it is limited use. The items are meant to be limited use items. You're not meant to pop a Perkaholic every match. But the problem with Black Ops 3 is that they allowed that exploit with the whole dashboarding thing, where you can just leave the game and then save your Gobblegums. So you could realistically get a Perkaholic pretty much every game, which yeah, ends up making it so most players just pop Perkaholics every game, including myself. I don't like having every single perk right off the bat, but I still will use Perkaholics pretty frequently because yeah, it's just making the game easier. Psychologically in my head, regardless of me wanting the game to be harder, I'm still just feeling like I'm wasting my time and just intentionally making the game harder by not using these external options. Now, if they worked as intended and you didn't have unlimited Gobblegums, then it wouldn't be a problem, and I would have absolutely zero issue with it, because getting a little treat every now and then where you get to start with all the perks, that's fine, like that's fun sometimes. But if I'm kind of feeling like I can use them every single game, well then it kind of changes things a bit. But again, I've definitely done challenges over the years where I'm doing like classic only things, and usually those work better when you're in like community events or you're going for world record runs, because there's separate categories for whether using megas or classics only, and stuff like that works. But in the game itself, there's really no incentive to only use classics. There's really no incentive to not use perkaholics, other than the fact that they are meant to be limited use items. Obviously, they weren't intending for people to use that exploit and then save them, so that was a much bigger issue that game had. But ultimately, yes, when people bring up the whole Gobblegum argument, I don't really disagree, it's just that's not how Gobblegums were intended to work. It also kind of reminds me of the Tombstone Glitch in Modern Warfare Zombies, which I don't know if you guys know about this, but there was this glitch for a while where you were essentially able to duplicate a bunch of items in Modern Warfare Zombies and even duplicate your cash, to the point where you can start every match with like a lot of cash. And it kind of ruined the game for a bit, because I always just felt like, what's even the point of the natural progression of Modern Warfare Zombies? What's even the point of playing the game how it's intended if you could just get all this money right off the bat and not even bother with contracts, not even bother with trying to grind the game normally? So that kind of broke the game a bit. And yes, of course, you can just choose not to do it. But again, psychologically, you're thinking in your mind, I have the option to make the game easier, so why am I not going to do it? Life is too short to spend a lot of time dealing with things that you know you can just skip over it. Now, this does change a bit depending on the game. Of course, if the core game is fantastic and really fun to do all the different things, then maybe I'm going to be less likely to use those things. For example, Infinite Warfare. I love Infinite Warfare so much, to the point where sometimes I will just not use Director's Cut mode, even though I have this mode that allows me to spawn in with all this cash, all the perks, and have weapons immediately upgraded out of the box. But I think the core game is just that much fun that sometimes I'll just play normally. But even playing in Director's Cut, they found a way to make it so there's still progression systems even within that. And they're fun progression systems and unique progression systems. So perhaps if Black Ops 6 is just fantastic by default, then maybe I won't really care that there's a loadout system there. But as I said before, I do strongly believe that there are some solid alternative options that they could do that could possibly please everyone. My first idea is a pretty simple one. Most people have already talked about this online before, but it's essentially just make it so you don't spawn in with your loadout weapon, but you can unlock your loadout weapon somehow on the map. And I'm not saying it has to be through some really difficult quest, although I really wouldn't mind that personally, but it could be something very simple. Like, for example, when you turn on the power, maybe a loadout drop drops in from the sky, just like from Warzone, and you go up to the loadout and maybe you have to purchase it for like 2,000 points. So usually you wouldn't be able to get your loadout weapon until like round, I don't know, 7 or 8 probably, whenever you turn on the power. So you still have to have those earlier rounds where you're using other weapons, maybe buying a couple wall weapons here or there just to get you through the map. And then once you get to that point where you can get your loadout, you can choose, do you want to spend 2,000, 3,000 points to get it? Or do you want to just say, screw it, let me just keep hitting the box, trying to get other weapons? And maybe if you hit the box before that, maybe you'll end up getting a good weapon that you want to keep regardless. So you might just say, screw it, I don't need my loadout weapon anymore. But like I said, maybe you'll want the loadout weapon because you want a direct way to get a weapon. Since most people only really want the loadout system for the camo grind, this to me would fix that problem completely. Do you really need to camo grind in the first 7 or 8 rounds? Probably not. So just wait till you get the loadout drop and then just go get it yourself. Go pick up whatever loadout gun you want and you can literally choose any of them, just like in Cold War. Now, of course, ideally this would work better if we had the classic point system, like I've mentioned before, because using the pistol on the early rounds just wouldn't feel the same if you don't have that classic point system. But that's just besides the point. Like I said, I made a whole other video on that. Another alternative option I have, which you can do multiple of these options, you don't have to do just one or the other. They could also just make it so there's different wall buys on each map, which ultimately can make it so every single gun in the game has at least one wall buy on at least one map. And this is kind of what Infinite Warfare did. I don't think they ended up doing every single weapon, but they did mix it up quite a bit. I know Cold War mixed it up a little, but not enough to the point where it made much of a difference. So if they were to make sure that almost every single gun has at least one map with a wall buy, then when you're doing the camo grind, you would decide to yourself, okay, I want to level up this specific gun. I want to get camos for this specific gun. And I know that the only map where there's a wall buy for that specific gun is, let's say, Terminus. So you now know you have to play Terminus in order to level up and camo grind that weapon. Of course, you could play the other maps. You just have to rely on the mystery box for those other maps. So if you want to get directly from the wall buy, you can just hop on a Terminus and play that map for the camo grinding. And some people will say that's limiting your experiences because it's forcing you to play certain maps. I don't see it as that though. I see it as encouraging variety. It's encouraging you to actually play different maps for different reasons. In Cold War, most people just play D Machine for the camo grind because it was the easiest map to camo grind. You could just camp on top of Noctur and Toten building and just spam your weapons down that long way. You know, that's what people just tended to do. But I like the idea of them actually encouraging you to play different maps for different reasons. If you want to get the AK-47 leveled up, if you know that wall buy is only on Liberty Falls, for example, well, now you got to go jump on the Liberty Falls and do that. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I also wouldn't be opposed to the loadout system I just mentioned. They could also just make it different map to map, and this would actually make a lot of sense in terms of the story, because think about Terminus, right? This map, we are playing as prisoners on this island that are likely going to be breaking out right when the map starts. So why would they have a bunch of OP weapons, or like whatever weapon they want, for example? Wouldn't it make a lot more sense for them to start with like a really shitty weapon to begin with? Maybe even not a weapon at all. Maybe they start with like a shiv or something, or they spawn in with their fists. That would be interesting. That would be different. It would make sense in terms of the story that they wouldn't have a bunch of OP weapons to begin with. So maybe that map wouldn't have loadouts at all. You just can't get loadouts on Terminus. But then Liberty Falls could be the map where you do get loadouts because, of course, you're playing as the strike team that's going to be going into Liberty Falls most likely. So that would make sense that you would spawn in with whatever gun you want. Now, I don't think that'd be the best option they can do, but it's at least an alternative option to at least give fans different ways to play different maps, and it would definitely give the maps more personality that is more unique to that map. And the last suggestion I have, which I think is my best suggestion, which actually makes the most sense, is just do separate modes for this. Like, I feel like that would be the most common sense thing here. Have the core game be more like classic zombies, where you get a starting pistol, you maybe even have a classic point system, and just have it be just simply like that, no loadouts at all. But then have a separate mode, and you could even call the separate mode like Sandbox Survival or something. And this mode, you spawn in with whatever you want, and it plays more like Cold War, where you just kind of spawn in and just kill zombies, and you're mainly playing it for the camo grind. And I've actually talked about this before as a way to make certain modes that are more simplistic for casual fans that don't like Easter eggs and don't like having to unlock anything on the map. This mode could also ideally just have everything automatically unlocked on the map. So this mode is literally just meant for people who just want to jump in and kill zombies, and that's it. They don't really care about map exploration or any of that stuff. But people who want a more immersive experience that feels more centered around progression and exploration could just play the classic mode. Personally, I don't think loadouts are like the make or break for Black Ops 6. I think there's a lot of other things that are way more important, but I do still think it is an important part to the core progression of the game. And I just wanted to explain what I think they could do that will be a lot better than the loadout system that they did in Cold War Zombies. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Peace out, everyone.